In the heart of Pinehaven, a quaint American town nestled where rolling hills met sprawling woods, autumn unfurled its golden banner with a quiet splendor. The air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves, and the trees stood like sentinels, their branches adorned in fiery hues of amber, crimson, and bronze. It was a season of fleeting beauty, where every gust of wind seemed to whisper secrets through the pines, secrets that lingered just beyond the reach of understanding. At the edge of this sleepy hamlet, where civilization gave way to untamed wilderness, a modest home sat perched on a gentle slope, its weathered porch creaking softly in the breeze. On one such autumn morning, the yard buzzed with the innocent energy of childhood. Linda, a spirited 7-year-old with chestnut curls that danced as she ran, led the charge across the grass. Her younger sister, Lily, just 5, trailed behind, her laughter a high-pitched melody that mingled with the rustling leaves. Their companion was Bob, a golden retriever whose coat shimmered like a patch of sunlight breaking through the canopy. His eyes, warm and knowing, followed the girls with a gentle loyalty that needed no words. To Linda and Lily, Bob was more than a pet. He was their shadow, their guardian, their partner in every adventure. "Faster, Bob!" Linda shouted, her voice bright with glee as she darted toward the massive oak tree that loomed at the yard's edge. Its gnarled branches stretched skyward, a silent giant marking the boundary between their safe haven and the mysterious forest beyond. "Chase me, Bob," Lily chimed in, her tiny legs pumping as she skipped over a patchwork of leaves, her blonde pigtails bouncing with every step. Bob bounded after them, his tail a metronome of joy, keeping pace with their playful chaos. The trio wove through the yard, their game a familiar ritual, until that day when the wind seemed to shift, carrying an unspoken invitation. As Linda reached the oak, she glanced toward the woods, her curiosity tugging her forward. "Let's go a little farther," she said, her voice daring yet soft as if testing the air. Lily giggled in agreement, and Bob, ever faithful, trotted alongside, unperturbed by the unseen line they were about to cross. The forest welcomed them with open arms, its towering pines casting long shadows that swallowed the daylight. The ground softened beneath their feet, carpeted with moss and brittle leaves that crunched with every step. Linda led the way, her imagination painting the woods as a grand kingdom. Tree trunks became castle spires, and ferns transformed into emerald curtains hiding secret treasures. Lily followed, her wide eyes drinking in the wonder while Bob weaved between them, his nose twitching at the unfamiliar scents of pine sap and damp earth. Back at the house, their mother stood on the porch, a steaming mug of coffee in hand. She'd watched their game unfold 100 times, always within the safe confines of the yard. But now, as the minutes stretched on, the sound of their laughter grew faint, swallowed by the wind's low hum. She set the mug down, her brow furrowing. "Linda? Lily?" she called, stepping forward, her voice threading through the crisp air. No answer came. She scanned the yard, empty. The oak stood alone, its branches swaying as if guarding a secret. Her pulse quickened, a mother's instinct igniting a spark of dread. "Girls!" she cried again, louder this time, her tone edged with panic. The silence that answered sent a shiver down her spine. She rushed inside, the screen door banging shut behind her, and snatched the phone from its cradle. Her fingers trembled as she dialed a neighbor. "They're gone," she stammered, her voice breaking. "The girls, they're not in the yard." Within moments, Pinehaven stirred to life. Word spread like wildfire, and soon the quiet morning shattered under the weight of urgency. Boots pounded the ground, voices shouted names, and the once peaceful town morphed into a hive of determined action. Meanwhile, deep within the woods, Linda and Lily had ventured far beyond their usual playground. The trees grew denser, their branches interlocking overhead to form a ceiling that muted the sun's warmth. The girls slowed, their breaths puffing in small clouds as the chill of the forest seeped into their jackets. Linda glanced around, her earlier excitement giving way to a flicker of unease. "Where are we?" she murmured, her hand tightening around Lily's. Lily's lip quivered, her eyes darting to the shadows. "I don't know, but Bob's here." She pointed to the golden retriever, who stood a few paces ahead, his ears pricked as if listening to the forest itself. Bob's presence steadied them. The sisters sank to the ground beside a cluster of ferns, their small bodies huddling close for warmth. Linda wrapped an arm around Lily, whispering, Don't worry, Bob won't let anything happen to us. Lily nodded, her voice small but brave. He'll protect us, right, Bob? She reached out, her fingers brushing his soft fur, and Bob leaned into her touch, his steady gaze a silent promise. As the afternoon waned, Bob took up his post. He paced a slow circle around the girls, his paws pressing into the damp earth, leaving faint prints in the moss. Every rustle, a squirrel darting through the underbrush, a branch swaying in the wind, drew a low, measured bark from his throat. His eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the growing darkness, and when an unfamiliar sound, a distant snap or the cry of a bird pierced the stillness, his barks sharpened, ringing out like a call to arms. To Linda and Lily, those barks were a lullaby of safety. To the world beyond, they were a signal, faint but persistent, threading through the trees. Unbeknownst to the girls, another figure had joined their forest odyssey. Artemis, the family's midnight black cat, had slipped out during the morning's chaos. She'd been basking on the windowsill, her sleek form a silhouette against the glass when the commotion drew her outside. With the stealth of a shadow, she'd wandered into the woods, her emerald eyes glinting as she explored the wilds. Now, lost amid the same labyrinth of trees, Artemis roamed alone, her path unwittingly entwined with the girl's fate. As dusk painted the sky in shades of indigo, Pinehaven mobilized. Flashlights sliced through the twilight, their beams dancing across tree trunks as volunteers and police fanned out into the forest. Sheriff Martinez, a broad-shouldered man with a voice that carried both authority and compassion, took charge. Fan out along the eastern trail, he ordered through his radio, his tone steady despite the weight of the moment. Keep sharp, listen for anything. Movement, barking, anything. The woods, vast and unyielding, seemed to swallow their efforts. Every snapped twig underfoot, every rustle of leaves, fueled a mix of hope and dread. Mothers clutched their coats tighter, fathers scanned the shadows, and children whispered prayers for their playmates. Among the searchers was Susan, a local teacher whose gentle demeanor hid a fierce resolve. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she moved through the undergrowth, her thoughts fixed on the girls she'd taught to read. Linda with her quick grin, Lily with her shy curiosity. They're out there, she murmured to herself, her voice a fragile thread of faith. Bob's with them. He won't let them down. Night fell, draping the forest in a cold, inky veil. The temperature plummeted, and the searchers' breath hung in the air like ghosts. Linda and Lily shivered, their thin jackets no match for the creeping chill. Bob pressed closer, his warm body a shield against the cold, his barks growing more insistent as the hours dragged on. Each sound he made echoed through the trees, a fragile lifeline in a sea of uncertainty, though the girls clung to him with a trust that never wavered. Dawn broke with a hesitant glow, the first rays piercing the canopy to reveal a forest scarred by the night's toil, trampled ferns, boot prints etched in the mud, and the faint hum of exhaustion among the searchers. Martinez rallied his team, his face lined with determination. "We keep going," he said, his voice a quiet roar over the crackling radios. "Bob's out there, leading us. Stay alert." Susan trudged alongside, her hands buried in her pockets, her mind racing. She'd spent the night imagining the girls' faces, Linda's bold laugh, Lily's wide-eyed wonder, and the thought of Bob, steadfast and golden, kept her moving. "He's their guardian," she whispered, her breath misting in the dawn air. "He won't stop until we find them." Then, as the sun climbed higher, a sound cut through the stillness, a series of sharp, urgent barks, fierce and unbroken. Martinez froze, his head snapping toward the noise. "That's him," he said, breaking into a run. The team followed, pushing through tangled branches and thorny vines, their hearts pounding in rhythm with Bob's call. The forest seemed to part before them, as if yielding to the dog's will, guiding them deeper into its heart. At last, they burst into a small clearing. There, nestled among ferns and framed by towering pines, sat Linda and Lily, their faces pale but alight with relief. Bob stood before them, his tail a blur of golden motion, his bark softening into whimpers of triumph. Linda clutched Lily, tears streaming down her cheeks as she cried, "We're here! We're here!" Lily buried her face in Bob's fur, her voice a whisper. "Thank you, Bob. You saved us." But the scene held one more surprise. Curled in a hollow log nearby, her black fur dusted with moss, was Artemis. Her green eyes blinked up at the rescuers, calm and knowing, as if she'd been waiting alongside the girls all along. The sight drew gasps from the searchers, two lost girls and a wayward cat, all preserved by one dog's unwavering vigilance. Martinez knelt, gathering the sisters into his arms, his gruff voice softening. "You're safe now," he murmured, brushing dirt from Lily's cheek. Susan dropped to her knees beside them, her hands trembling as she stroked Bob's head, tears spilling freely. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. The forest, once a labyrinth of fear, now hummed with the sweet sound of reunion, shouts of joy, the crackle of radios, and the rustle of leaves as the team enveloped their found treasures. Word raced back to Pinehaven, igniting a wave of relief that swept through every home. At the station, Martinez stood before a small crowd, his hat in hand. "Bob's barks led us straight to them," he said, a rare smile breaking through his stern facade. "He saved Linda, Lily, and even little Artemis. That dog's a hero." The days that followed draped Pinehaven in a quiet celebration. The tale of the lost girls, the mysterious cat, and the golden retriever who defied the odds spread like wildfire, whispered over coffee at the diner, recounted in classrooms, and printed in the local paper with a grainy photo of Bob, his tongue lolling in a proud grin. Families lingered a little longer in their hugs, neighbors swapped stories of their own pet's loyalty, and a small plaque was erected near the oak tree, etched with simple words, "To Bob, guardian of the woods." Martinez spoke at the unveiling, his voice warm against the autumn chill. "This is for Bob, a true protector. He reminds us that in our darkest moments, love and loyalty can carve a path home, no matter how lost we feel." The story took root in Pinehaven's soul, a living legend that grew with every telling. Each rustle of leaves in the wind, each distant bark echoing through the trees, carried the echo of that autumn day, when Linda and Lily faced the wilds with courage, when Artemis wandered and returned, and when Bob, with a heart as golden as his fur, turned a shadowed nightmare into a triumph of light. It was a testament to the unspoken bonds that tie us together, a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wag tails and bark through the night. Years later, the oak still stood, its branches swaying as if whispering the tale to new generations. Linda, now taller and bolder, would pause beneath it, her hand resting on Bob's aging head, and smile at Lily, who'd grown into her own quiet strength. Artemis, ever elusive, would watch from the porch, her eyes glinting with the wisdom of a survivor. And in the quiet of Pinehaven, where the woods stretched endless and eternal, the memory of Bob's bravery lived on, a beacon of hope, a story of grace, and a love that conquered the dark.